For centuries, warfare in Europe obeyed an immutable rule. Armored cavalry was king. A knight on horseback was likened to a medieval tank, invincible. But history always harbors brutal twists. In a forgotten gorge named Morgarten, that rule was not just broken, it was completely pulverized. On November 15th, 1315, an army clad in steel confidently advanced through a narrow pass, convinced that victory was inevitable. The Habsburg army, with thousands of elite knights in armor riding war horses bred for battle, represented one of the most powerful dynasties in Europe. Before them stood only a small group of mountain folk, peasants and shepherds. By all rules of medieval warfare, this confrontation should have ended in minutes. The knights believed their discipline and armor made them invulnerable. They believed their enemy was too poor, too few, and too primitive to resist. However, they were wrong. The fatal mistake of this army was assuming that numbers alone were enough to guarantee victory. High above, on the narrow path at Morgarten, silence reigned. It was not the silence of fear, but the silence of waiting. Men hid amongst the trees and rocks, gripping tools meant for farming, not fighting. Clearly, this was not a fair fight, a battle that should never have happened. But what unfolded at Morgarten shocked all of Europe. Everyone asked the same absurd question. How could a small band of mountain people defeat one of the most terrifying armies of the age? How could a narrow pass rewrite the rules of medieval warfare? To understand why Morgarten was not just a battle, but a turning point in European history, we must go back to the moment just before the first stone rolled down the mountainside. In the Alps, where the fate of an entire land began to veer in a completely different direction. In the early 14th century, Switzerland was not yet the symbol of neutrality or peace we know today. On the military map of Europe, it was a mysterious wasteland where sky-piercing mountains concealed small communities quietly preparing for an earth-shattering event. They prepared not with troop numbers, not with overwhelming military might, but with a tactical decision that would change history forever. Let's look at the geopolitical position of the time. Switzerland was not a unified nation, but a collection of autonomous communities scattered within the deep valleys of the Alps. At first glance, these valleys seemed impoverished. Few bustling towns, no magnificent castles, and certainly no wealthy courts. But their location held the jugular of the entire continent. The mountain passes connecting northern and southern Europe ran right through here. Anyone wishing to transport goods, armies, or capital from Italy to Germany and vice versa was forced to pass this way. Controlling Switzerland meant controlling the economic flow of all Central Europe. The House of Habsburg, a colossal power with ambitions to swallow strategic lands, had begun to tighten the noose around these autonomous regions. For the Habsburgs, subduing these valleys was not just a matter of territory, but of authority. They could not accept a group of peasants refusing to pay taxes and disobeying orders. But they made a fatal error right from the first step. They viewed their opponent with contempt. In November 1315, the Habsburg army marched into central Switzerland. Visualize this terrible contrast. On one side, a professional army armed to the teeth, carrying the ultimate symbols of medieval power: armored cavalry, long swords, lances, shields, and seasoned combat experience. On the other side, mountain communities, farmers, craftsmen, villagers living scattered lives. The Habsburgs marched with near absolute confidence. They did not see this as a great war, but merely a suppression, a walk in the park to punish rebels. In the military mindset of the time, the mere presence of armored cavalry was enough to dissolve all resistance. The sound of hooves and the clatter of iron armor was the sound of domination. But there was a surprise factor they had overlooked, a factor not found in any knight's tactical handbook: winter in the Alps. The Habsburg army, with thousands of men and horses, stretched into a long, sluggish column entering enemy territory. They carried heavy armor and rode massive war horses, assets on the open plains that now became deadly burdens. They were stepping into a world not meant for them, a world of dense fog, slippery paths, and sheer cliffs. Here the tension began to escalate, not from the sound of war drums, but from a chilling silence. The deeper they went, the narrower the road became. The Habsburg formation stretched dangerously thin. The knights at the front could not see the end of the column. Communication was severed. They transformed into a giant snake, slow and blind, slithering into the enemy's lair. They did not know that their every step was being watched. The road through Morgarten was not a random battlefield. It was a choice pre-calculated by the Swiss. The terrain here revealed a masterstroke of strategic planning. On one side, a steep mountain slope covered in dense forest and slick snow. On the other, the freezing Lake Ägeri and swampy marshland. In the middle lay a narrow trail, barely wide enough for a few riders abreast. This was a classic choke point. Once inside, there was no retreat, no space to deploy, and most importantly, cavalry could not maneuver. The cavalry's greatest strengths were speed and momentum. But at Morgarten, speed was zero. The Swiss understood this better than anyone. They had no cavalry. They had no steel-plate armor. If they fought head-on on open ground, they would be slaughtered in minutes. So they changed the rules of the game. They used their own land as a weapon. They blocked other routes with artificial obstacles, forcing the Habsburgs into this Morgarten path. This was a tactical twist. The strong thought they were on the offensive, but in reality, they were delivering themselves into a prearranged kill zone. Early that morning, thick fog obscured all vision. The Habsburg forces entered the narrow pass, unaware that, right above their heads on the steep slopes, hundreds of Swiss warriors were holding their breath in wait. Not a regular army standing in lines, but ghosts flickering behind the trees. The trap was set, and the prey was securely inside. When the Habsburg column was tucked deep into the narrowest section, the attack began. But it didn't start with a war horn or arrows. It began with a thunderous roar from above, a surprise element that completely paralyzed the knights' reflexes. Rocks. The Swiss didn't use pebbles. They had prepared massive boulders and large tree trunks, carefully camouflaged on the slopes. When the signal was given, gravity did the rest. Stones weighing hundreds of pounds crashed down like bombs from the sky, smashing directly into the crowded formation below. The formation was instantly plunged into panic. War horses, terrified, bucked and threw their riders. Expensive iron armor was dented and crushed under the weight of the boulders. The Habsburg formation shattered before they could even draw their swords. This was the pivotal moment of Morgarten: paralysis. The vanguard was halted by obstacles. The rear guard continued to push forward, unaware of the chaos ahead. They trampled each other. Knights fell into the mud, unable to rise because of their heavy armor. The screams of men and horses echoed in the narrow gorge, creating a terrifying psychological effect. That was the moment the Swiss appeared. The Swiss forces flooded down the mountainside. This was not an army of mercenaries. They were farmers, hunters, herdsmen. Their weapons were tools they used daily: axes, clubs, and especially a weapon that would become the nightmare of cavalry thereafter: the halberd. This is a crucial tactical detail. In the confined space, the knight's longsword became useless and cumbersome. But the halberd, a long polearm fitted with an axe blade and a steel hook, was brutally effective. The Swiss did not try to duel. They used the hooks to drag knights off their horses, the axe blades to pierce armor, and the spikes to finish the job. They targeted the horse's legs, the weak points in the armor, the loss of balance. The battlefield turned into a bloody melee. The Swiss charged without hesitation. They knew that if they let the Habsburg cavalry regain formation, they would lose. So they attacked with ferocity and terrifying speed. The tension reached its peak. The Habsburgs were trapped. To the right was a cliff full of enemies. To the left, the freezing lake and marsh. Blocked in front, crushed from behind. The proud knights were now just crabs in an iron cage. A Swiss warrior swung an iron-shod club, shattering a horse's leg, bringing the beast down. Others rushed in, hacking with axes and clubs at the knights sprawling on the ground. The battle quickly turned into a massacre. The waves of Swiss attacks were relentless. They poured down like a flood, using the momentum from the high ground to add power to every strike. Meanwhile, the Habsburgs were in total disarray. Those in the rear, ignorant of the situation, kept pushing forward, inadvertently driving their comrades to their deaths. A horrific scene unfolded. Many Habsburg knights, in desperation, tried to ride their horses into Lake Ägeri to escape. But the weight of their armor and the mud dragged them down to the freezing bottom. They drowned inside the very armor that symbolized their strength. The Swiss, with smart tactics and frightening coordination, swept the Habsburgs from Morgarten. They knew every inch of the land, moving fluidly over terrain where the enemy stumbled. A Swiss warrior would down a knight, and immediately another would fill his spot to continue the attack. This continuity gave the Habsburgs not a single second to breathe or regroup. The Habsburg morale collapsed completely. They realized that strength, reputation, and state-of-the-art equipment could not save them from this trap. Too many had fallen. Too many horses were dead. The once proud army was now just a chaotic mob trampling over one another to flee. The battle ended in less than an hour. Fast, violent, and ruthless. A total and humiliating defeat for an army accustomed to order and discipline. In that chaotic moment between the mountain and the swamp, the order of medieval warfare was completely overturned. A mighty empire realized that brute strength does not always win, and mountain communities understood that they could determine their own fate, bowing to no dynasty. The Battle of Morgarten is not renowned for the sheer number of troops or illustrious royal names. It is remembered for a far deeper reason. It was the impossible made real. In those chaotic minutes between the mountain and the marsh, the established order of medieval warfare was completely overturned. A mighty empire realized that brute force does not always ensure victory, and the mountain communities understood that they could determine their own destiny, bowing to no dynasty. The assault at Morgarten was not a battle of scale, but a battle of tactical mindset and unyielding spirit. The Habsburgs possessed everything: cavalry, superior weaponry, and formal training. Yet, in that moment, they could not defeat the creativity and adaptability of the Swiss. The Swiss did not triumph through numbers or steel. They won through guerrilla tactics, by turning the terrain into an ally, and through absolute unity. They proved a new truth. True power lies not in gleaming armor, but in the deep understanding and resolve to defend the very earth beneath one's feet. Today, Morgarten is not just a historical site. It is a reminder that sometimes history is not written by the strongest, but by those who know the land they stand on and are willing to defend it to the end.